Well, today marks the beginning of our 159th academic year. On the occasion of a new school year, we typically take time to reflect on the state of our college and outline some aspirations for the coming 12 months. This year, we can't fully assess the state of our college without first reflecting on the state of our world. Evidenced by the fact that I'm here in an empty Dimnant chapel and you're sitting in front of your computer screen watching yet another Zoom call. We're forced to confront the reality that this so-called bubble of Hope College is profoundly impacted by the world out there. And in recognizing this, we find ourselves pondering one big thing. Is it too much to ask for some precedented times? Throughout our history, Hope's leaders have, with God's guidance, led this college through many unprecedented periods. Through the Civil War, through the World Wars, through the Great Depression, the Great Recession. We've opened our college in the middle of 40 presidential election cycles. We even survived the potential visit by Mike Pence last fall. For a while, I thought that would be my biggest challenge during my first year as president. We've seen a lot. We've opened this college in the middle of very challenging periods, and yet we've never opened an academic year quite like this. You all have worked all summer long to prepare for opening our college in the middle of these unusual circumstances. You've made plans, you've adjusted those plans as circumstances have changed. Many of you sacrificed vacation time, and all of us, in the season in which we're normally feeling energized and ready to go, we're feeling exhausted. And that's understandable, because this work is not easy, there are many unknowns, and the world out there is exasperating. And somehow we're expected to prepare our students for lives of leadership and service in that world which has been turned completely upside down in the last 6 months. We're in the middle of a pandemic that will make something called COVID-19 the third leading cause of death in the United States this year, after only heart disease and cancer. And this summer, our country was rocked by the murder of several Black Americans, this coming after a string of too many of these kinds of events that brings into sharp focus the very real issues of racial injustice that continue to haunt this country. Now, these are the headlines, and of course, underneath these headlines are deeper issues that have percolated underneath the veneer for far too long. Issues like widening economic inequality, uneven access to good health care, and a plague of discrimination and bigotry that continues to allow the color of one's skin to influence the kind of experience one has in this country. All of these are issues that are actually symptoms of a much deeper issue, a much more fundamental issue. And it's simply this: we live in a broken world. And that brokenness today is more apparent than it has been in a long time. When looking at the state of our world and trying to understand what it means for us, the question we have to consider is more than just how do we survive. As we've discussed in the past, that's not the right question for us. Rather, I think the kind of questions we should be asking are more along the lines of how do we engage with this broken world, knowing that we're actually citizens of a different kingdom. Our world is being disrupted, it's being reshaped, and that gives us the opportunity to provide influence. It means we don't have to accept the way that the world is, nor do we have to accept the way the world was. Because when things are shaken up, they fall back into place differently. And we have an enormous opportunity to shape what the world will look like as we come out of this. How we do that, and what we want the world to look like, those are the important questions. Those are scholarly questions. Those are academic questions. Those are questions that require maturity, understanding, and true spiritual wisdom. In Luke 16, there's a moment when Jesus is talking to his disciples. And Jesus has this line. He says, "The people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their kind than the people of the light." That line is a criticism of the people of the light. That line is a criticism of Christians. What Jesus is saying is, he's saying, Christians, I've observed something. You are getting outsmarted. You're getting outsmarted by the world. Christians, you're too often characterized by simple thinking and naivete. Well, that shouldn't be the case here. We're an organization made up of Christian intellectuals. We are built for this moment. And as we talked about a few weeks ago, this moment gives us opportunities. It gives us opportunities to learn, to grow, and to innovate. Last summer, when I stood in front of you for the very first time, I quoted Isaiah 43, and I told you that I felt God setting us up to do a new thing at Hope College. I feel that today more acutely than ever before. And the opportunity for new things, as I see them, fall squarely within the three areas of focus that I've been highlighting since last year: the future of learning, the future of work, and the future business model of higher education. Higher education has been disrupted like no other time in history. And that gives us the opportunity to be shrewd people of the light in how we navigate this. Rather than being takers of circumstances, we can be makers of circumstances. To help make this specific, let me give you 4 observations regarding trends in higher education as I see them that are resulting from what we're going through now. And then let me try to describe how I think these 4 trends are enormous opportunities for us at Hope College. Observation number 1, the growth of online learning will accelerate. Now, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out or to observe that, but I do think it's interesting to unpack what the ripple effects will be of that trend. For one thing, as this happens, as the growth of online learning accelerates, I expect that we'll see new entrants into the field of higher education. In particular, watch for large technology companies to enter our space. Google, for example, is already investing millions of dollars in educational services and expertise, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some institutions, probably starting with large state institutions, partnering with these companies. Imagine, for example, Michigan State University, powered by Google. It would allow students to take online classes powered by a name brand tech company at an institution with a nationally ranked football team. Sounds fairly compelling, I guess. The question is, what does this mean for us? Well, some have heralded this trend as the end of traditional liberal arts education. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. And as supporters of residential liberal arts education, we certainly don't want that to be the case. Well, guess what? We can do something about it. We can be shrewd people of the light. See, the world of higher education is heading very quickly in one particular direction right now: online learning. And the easy thing to do would be to follow, because the traditional model of learning has never been more complicated or more expensive than it is right now. But if we believe in the traditional model, which we do, then let's do something countercultural. While the world goes in one direction, let's go the other direction, and let's double down now in this season on the residential liberal arts learning experience. Our students have demonstrated that they want to be here. Consider the fact that over 90% of our enrolled students will be on campus this semester for, let's just be honest, some fairly unpleasant circumstances that they have to deal with. And if our students want to be here and we believe in it, let's double down on it. Instead of following what others are doing, let's look for opportunities in the midst of this time to innovate and improve upon our on-campus residential experience. Now, by the way, part of how we do this might involve technology. As Gerald Griffin likes to say, we can look for opportunities to infuse our traditional curriculum with some new technological and digital expertise. That's exciting. Observation number 2, the growth of online learning will mean more uniformity in curriculum. See, online education is highly scalable. That's why the providers of it love it so much. Remote classes and online universities have the ability to accommodate thousands of students in one lecture, in one class. Here's what this means. What it means is that more students will be learning the same thing from the same people and the same places. It's more uniformity in curriculum. And as education inherently becomes more high-tech, it becomes less high-touch. It becomes less personally transformative. Online programs are also oriented toward ushering students in and out quickly and practically so that they can get a job. And that's important, but it neglects the thoughtful reflection and the life of the mind that we find so important here. Well, this again presents an opportunity for us. As the world moves toward curriculum that's more standardized, more uniform, we can go the other direction and make our curriculum more customized, more high-touch, more individualized to the passions and curiosities of each student. One could even imagine the possibility at some point in the future when Hope, rather than offering a traditional selection of majors, offers an abundance of high-quality curricular resources and building blocks that empower students to shape a highly personalized educational journey based on their fields of interest and their discerned calling. That's exciting. Observation number 3, the average age of U.S. college students will increase. Now, this was already happening, but now, with students around the country taking gap years, the average age of a college student will rise further. as people simply go to college later in life. Furthermore, a Brookings study published just this summer in June showed that as a result of economic uncertainty happening right now, fewer babies will be born next year than previously expected. At one point, I think we thought that because of stay-at-home orders, there might be actually more babies during this season. People at one point were talking about COVID babies. Well, I guess it turns out that with lots of uncertainty, people just aren't in the mood. And let's be honest, when times are stressful, it's a lot easier to turn on the TV than to try to turn on your partner. Hold on. Thank you. I like that joke. The Brookings study estimates that next year, 2021, there will be 10% fewer babies born than previously predicted. That same phenomenon happened just 10 years ago in the Great Recession. These demographic shifts will impact higher education for the long term. With less students overall and less students in the 18 to 22-year-old range, we have the chance to think creatively about reaching a demographic beyond the traditional college-age student. We could develop opportunities to foster lifelong learning, such as offering educational tracks for people at different stages in their life and career. And this could be especially compelling as the future of work continues to evolve and we enter what's very likely to be a sustained period of economic downturn. To summarize what we've said so far, the world says residential liberal arts education is dying. We, people of hope, say let's lean into our model and make it better. The world says it's cheaper and easier to scale up to a one-size-fits-all online model. We, hope, say let's improve our technological capabilities, but let's see how we can use that to customize and empower each of our students to find a bespoke education that fits uniquely to them. Third, the world says learning is for young people to get jobs. We, people of hope, say learning is a lifelong shaping of the soul that doesn't stop when you reach a certain age. These are just possibilities. I'm just naming some ideas, and I'd love for you to think with me about more ideas. I'd love for you to dream with me and dream even bigger. This is part of what it means to be living into this moment as a people of hope. Let me mention one more observation, which I think presents a very big opportunity for us to apply a unique Christian approach to this disruption. Observation number 4. Sustained financial challenges in higher education will result in more inequality. As we all know, the financial challenges for higher education stemming from this pandemic will be significant and long-lasting. Here's the headline. In aggregate, revenues will decline while expenditures will grow. On a small scale, this is true at Hope College. We anticipate some revenue impact this year. Probably for us, it will be 5% or less, and that's due primarily to students who've deferred and to summer programs and other things that we've canceled. Of course, if we had to pivot back to remote learning, the revenue impact would be even greater. In addition, we're spending some money to make our campus a safe and productive learning environment. All told, we will probably spend between $3 and $4 million this year on COVID-related expenses. For us, that's manageable. It's a significant financial challenge, but it's manageable. On the national level, however, the numbers look much more dire, which again highlights the fact that we're in a uniquely good place at Hope College. According to one recent article from Inside Higher Ed, higher education revenue nationally could be impacted by as much as 30% this year alone. At the same time, operational costs will rise by billions of dollars. And here's what this means. What it means, less revenue and higher expenditures will inevitably result in less scholarship money available for students. And with less scholarship money available, the real cost of education, in particular residential education like what we offer here at Hope, the real cost will go up yet again. It'll go up this year, and it'll likely go up for several years to come. The impact of that is greater inequality. See, the kind of education that we believe in, the kind of education that we provide at Hope will inherently become less accessible to those who aren't otherwise wealthy or privileged. And those who can't afford an expensive education will default to weaker programs, probably online programs. Graduates of schools like ours will have a leg up in a challenged employment environment, and the result will be even greater inequity and a deeper wealth divide. We have a chance to do something about this, starting right here at Hope College, which is why I believe it's so paramount that we work diligently to bring down the cost of a Hope education. And we've already started this work. By offering a record increase in new scholarship money last year, we significantly reduced the net cost of a Hope education. The average net tuition cost for a first-year student last year, a year ago this time, was around $19,000. The average net tuition cost for a first-year student this fall is around $17,000. That's a decrease of approximately 10% in net cost in just 1 year. It's a good start, but we have a long way to go. Because while priceless, a Hope education is still unreachably expensive for far too many families. And we will change this. We will change this by being smart about how we spend money and aggressive in raising new scholarship money for the endowment. And I'm committed to this. I'm more committed to this than ever before. And here again, we can uniquely distinguish ourselves from the rest of the world. See, everybody else is retreating financially. Everybody else is reducing scholarships and deciding to hold off on capital campaigns. Do you know what we're doing here at Hope? We're preparing to launch what will be by far the biggest capital campaign in our school's history. We're preparing to launch a 10-year, billion-dollar project of raising money toward a new tuition model, pay it forward, that, as far as I can tell, no one's ever tried before. Who would do this now? Who would set such an ambitious goal? Who would try to raise such a ridiculous amount of money in this economic environment? Only people who believe that God is trying to do a new thing. And maybe, just maybe, this new thing is an aggressive pursuit of equality and justice at a time when it's never mattered more. The world says it's impossible to make higher education more affordable, and that perpetuates injustice. And one of the most tangible ways that an institution of higher learning can respond to injustice in the world is to make what we do here more affordable and more accessible. It's a matter of equality. It's a matter of justice. And that is so central to the heart of God. The Bible says in Amos 5 that God doesn't even want to hear our worship. He can't stand the sound of our praise unless we let justice roll down like a river. That's what I want for Hope. I want us to be a place that lets justice roll out of us like a never-failing stream. And this means that we fight injustice and inequality wherever we see it. Of course, today, one of the main places we see injustice and inequality is racial injustice. Racial injustice takes many forms. One way that racism perpetuates itself is through structures and through institutions. Well, here we are at an institution, and one way that we can respond is by doing what we can to close the education gap and close the wealth gap. It's a way for us to let justice roll out of us like a river, which is why I'm so committed to bringing the cost of a Hope education down. But of course, there's more we can do to fight for racial justice. I think for us as Christians, it starts with a fundamental thing, which is that we have to be especially enthusiastic about diversity. I think it's nearly impossible to overstate how much God cares about this. God likes racial diversity. When you read the Bible, one thing that's clear about God is a God who has preferences. There are things God likes and there are things God doesn't like. Diversity is one of the things God likes. He made it. He created it. He loves it. And at the end of time, when all things are redeemed, there will still be diversity. Different languages, different cultures, different races gathered together around the throne. God likes diversity. And I think that means God prefers mixed race communities, diverse communities. I think God likes mixed race churches. I think God likes mixed race schools. I would even go so far as to say that I think God likes mixed race families. In Numbers 12, Moses, who's a Jewish man, marries a black woman. And God not only approves of it, but he punishes people who don't like it. God likes diversity. And that means Christians have to be especially enthusiastic supporters of diversity. But we also have to recognize that the Christian church doesn't have a very good record on this issue. Tragically, Christians, and I'm speaking specifically to white Christians, have historically been slow to speak out and work against racial injustice. In 1963, Martin Luther King was arrested on Good Friday. And while he was in the Birmingham jail, 8 white pastors criticized him for being unwise and untimely in his methods. They called on him to be more patient in his pursuit of civil rights. It was in response to that criticism from white pastors that Martin Luther King wrote his famous letter from the Birmingham jail, in which he says, in the midst of blatant injustices, I have watched white churchmen stand on the sideline and mouth pious irrelevancies and sanctimonious trivialities. In the midst of a mighty struggle to rid our nation of racial and economic injustice, I have heard many ministers say those are social issues with which the gospel has no real concern. I don't want anyone to look back on us and say that we were in the midst, that we were standing on the sidelines in the midst of today's mighty struggle against racial and economic injustice. But we have work to do, because today the Christian church itself is one of the most segregated institutions in the United States. Of people who attend church, 95% of whites attend a predominantly white church, and 95% of blacks attend a predominantly black church. Churches have not only not helped bridge the racial divide in this country, but every single Sunday morning, churches are reinforcing this divide. And that's simply not okay. Christians, because of how near this is to God's heart, we should be leading the way, working the hardest to pull off multi-ethnic, multiracial communities. It won't surprise you to hear me say that I have hope. And I actually believe that we have a shot of pulling this off here at Hope College. See, the world says Christians have lost credibility in fighting for racial justice. Well, let's show them that with Christ at the center of Hope College, we can do this. I believe we have a renewed commitment on our campus to enhance racial diversity in our student and employee populations, and I believe we have new enthusiasm to create a workplace culture that's characterized by belonging. And because we're a residential college, this gives us the opportunity to model something that most adult communities have never figured out how to model. Because we're a residential community, our students have the opportunity to create a beautiful mosaic of people who live together, eat together, learn together, worship together, and play together. As I said, that's something that very few adult communities have learned to model. We can do it. We can do it here. How do we do it? Well, it seems to me the starting point should be with ourselves. I think we have to look at our own lives first. I've been on my own personal journey recently. I know that I have my own blind spots. I know that in many ways I'm part of the problem. And so I've been asking myself, what can I do personally to get better? How can I use my influence to advocate for racial justice? We can all ask ourselves the same kind of questions. And I think we can be of great help to each other. We can be examples to each other. We can provide discussion and encouragement. We can provide belonging, understanding, and grace. As an individual, I'm committed to leaning into my own discomfort. And I'm committed to, as we say in the Belonging, Grace, and Understanding document, I'm committing to getting past my usual social patterns, being uncomfortable, trying new things. The disruption taking place gives us the opportunity to change our status quo, both as individuals and as an institution. And from an institutional standpoint, as you know, we formed a steering committee over the summer. We wanted to respond to today's struggle against racial injustice with the same kind of urgency and structure with which we responded to the COVID pandemic. Vanessa Green is leading this committee. We have great people serving on the committee, and they're taking a gospel-centered approach to this work. I've asked them to give us bold recommendations on how we can promote racial justice on our campus. They're set to report back in 6 to 8 months of getting started, which was earlier this summer. The possibility of making significant progress at Hope in this regard excites me. The challenge and the opportunity that we have is to live into the full depth and impact the full depth and impact with a mature understanding of the core Christian ethic. And when you boil it all down, when you boil down the ethic of Jesus, the teachings of Jesus, it comes down to two things: a radical devotion to God and a radical love for each other. And that's what I want Hope to be characterized by. Speaking of boiling things down, for me this season has been grounding. I know that's been the case for a lot of people. For me, it's given me a whole new appreciation for simple things like handshakes that we once took for granted. I was talking to somebody this morning, and he said normally he hates this time of year because it's hard to find a parking spot, and this year he was taking joy in the fact that it's now hard to find a parking spot again. All of this has helped put things into perspective. Tragically, over the last few months, it seems we've had far too many reminders of how brief and fragile life can be. Currently, our campus community, as Trig mentioned, we're grieving the loss of our own Diana Michela, who passed away last week. Diana will be remembered not just as a payroll manager whose quiet dedication kept us all paid on time. She'll more importantly be remembered as someone who served our institution and her colleagues with kindness and care and therefore made us better. And that's ultimately what matters. And someday, when they're writing the history of this season, that's what I want them to say about all of us. As we enter our 159th year, I've reflected on my own history at Hope. For me, this marks 23 years since I first experienced a fall on this campus. I came here for the first time in the fall of 1997 for a visit. I was with my dad. I honestly only remember two things from that visit. I remember attending one of Joel Toppin's political science classes, and I remember stepping foot into this building for the first time. God stirred something in me that day, something that continues to stir in me today. It's a profound belief in this institution and what we stand for, hope. I never properly thanked my dad for dragging me here that day. At the time, I thought I wanted to study at the University of Michigan. But that day, thanks to you, changed my life. Next month will mark 7 years since my dad passed away. He died from cancer. My dad was a PhD chemist. He worked at Upjohn in Portage, Michigan, which eventually became Pfizer. He, too, was a quiet, dedicated employee. He showed virtually no career ambition. He was content to have the same job for decades. All of my ambition came from my mom. My dad was an introvert, but he was an introvert who loved people. Honestly, I'm not sure he really liked people. I don't think people gave him much energy, but he sure loved people. And at his funeral visitation, several people showed up who we had never met before. We had no idea who these people were. We didn't know my dad knew these people. One of them was the gas station attendant from the Shell gas station in Portage, Michigan. He came up to my siblings and me, and he introduced himself. "How did you know my dad?" we asked him. He said, "Oh, your dad used to," he said, "I saw the obituary in the paper, I recognized his picture, and he used to come to the Shell gas station often. And he would ask about me, and he remembered my name, and he remembered my kids' names, and he would ask about my kids." And at the end of the day, that's what matters. An institution like ours is nothing but a collection of people. And my prayer is that we would be a collection of people characterized by true love for each other. This year has been hard on all of us in different ways. You know what the hardest part of this year has been for me? It's been missing my parents. They've been gone for several years, and yet somehow I've never missed them like I missed them this year. I can't tell you how many times I would have liked to pick up the phone and call them and say, "This is crazy what we're dealing with." My mom had ambition, my dad had love, and on my best days, that inspires me to be a person characterized by ambitious love. And I do my best to pay that forward and influence as many people as I can. Sociologists remind us that even the most introverted people get the chance to influence up to 10,000 lives over the course of a lifetime. Well, because we at Hope have hundreds of new students coming onto our campus every year at this time, we have the opportunity to influence countless more than the average person. We have the opportunity to love others and let justice roll out of us like a river. And here's the thing, it's contagious, because when you see it in others, like in Diana or in my dad, it changes you. And when our students see it in us, they will be transformed. I know these are trying times. I know that what we are aspiring to achieve as an institution will not happen in a smooth and easy way. It will be hard. And yet, let's remember the words from James, who tells us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Our world is broken, and we can be a people who can help fix it. We can be a people who help fix the world by exuding joy and love and grace and understanding and belonging and hope at every possible corner. So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's finish the work. I know it kind of feels like we're at the finish line, but we're actually only at the starting line. Let's do this. Let's do this so that we may be complete and mature and not lacking anything. Let's be shrewd people of the light. You know what I think? I think this is going to be a banner year at Hope College. I think this is going to be a banner year in all respects. A banner year academically, a banner year operationally, a banner year financially. In every possible way. I see it, and I hope you do too. God is doing a new thing. Thank you. Thank you for who you are and for what you've done. I have never worked with a group of people who I respect and admire as much as I respect and admire all of you. Spera and Deo. Let's do this together. Thank you, Hope College.